Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to this policy briefing on advancing the EU migration and asylum agenda. My name is Alberto Neidhardt and I'm the head of the migration program here at the European Policy Center. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome the European Commissioner for Interior Affairs and Migration, Magnus Brunner. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. As all of you know, EU migration and asylum agenda remains marked by ambitious goals and urgent priorities too, and this is reflected, I believe, in the letter circulated by Commission President Ursula von der Leyen ahead of the European Council, which is currently underway. In recent weeks, several initiatives have been launched from an update on the implementation on the new pact reforms to legislative proposals, among others on return, but also the extension of temporary protection for displaced Ukrainians. All these initiatives, I believe, illustrate your approach and call, Commissioner, for a firm but fair migration policy. Meanwhile, however, long-term trends, including demographic change, but also challenges relating to major geopolitical shifts in the EU's neighborhood and beyond, as well as domestic dynamics across Europe, are all set to have a bearing on the development as well as the implementation of EU migration and asylum policies in the future. So, like others, I'm truly looking forward to this exchange, Commissioner, and I hope we will learn more about how the Commission, under your leadership, intends to navigate these shifts. As a reminder to our audience today, the event will begin with a 10-minute keynote from the Commissioner, which will be followed by an exchange where I will kick us off with some questions to the Commissioner before opening the floor to participants online and those in the room. And so I will collect some questions from the audience. Commissioner, without further ado, I would invite you to take the podium, as I believe they came to hear you and not me. So
I don't know. maybe they rather want to hear you, but I don't know. But thanks anyway for, first of all, for inviting me. I think it's always good to get engaged with experts, with you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity also, because as you mentioned, there's a lot going on, of course, and of course also the situation, the geopolitical situation, I would say doesn't help us a lot at the moment. A lot of crisis situations, even war situations, we are challenging at the moment, and it doesn't really help us, I would say, when it comes to the migration topic altogether, but also to have a sort of serious approach to the migration topic. I think everything in the migration, and that's what I realized in the first 6 months, is always left or right or whatever, and I don't think that's not the right approach. And I'm really glad that I get the opportunity today to discuss in a more serious and more fact-orientated way than we sometimes have the chance when it comes to whatever media discussions also. And because when people hear the word migrant, what is the first thing that comes into their heads? For many Europeans, I think migration has become a synonymous for fear in a way. Fear about job displacement, about strain on public resources, on downward pressure on wages, fear that their governments do not have control over what is happening. And that's a wrong approach in my point of view. If we talk about illegal migration, and that's exactly what we have to differentiate between illegal and legal migration. If we talk about illegal migration, it is clear where those fears maybe come from also. And it is our duty to respond to those fears. But as I said before, we always have to differentiate between illegal and legal migration. And I think if we, and just to get you some figures, in reality, if we were to stop all legal migration into Europe, in 20 years, we would be between 9% and 15% poorer we are today. And that is something what in the discussion, of course, never comes up. We would lose our edge and actually gradually would also fall behind China, the US, emerging economies also like Brazil, like India. So that's not what we want, at least in my point of view, in the European Union. And that in turn would mean we would actually not be a global player anymore. So just to get the facts also and the figures together. And that is why when we speak about fixing the problems in the EU migration management system, we do not mean ending migration altogether. We don't. We're just talking about the illegal migration, and the legal migration, of course, we have to find ways, because we desperately need legal migration for our labor markets, for the development of the society altogether. So we mean controlling migration, yes, and also creating the conditions for the legal migration that also corresponds with, I would say, with the needs of our labor market and our economy altogether, and bringing the skills and the human energy that the European Union actually needs to stay competitive in tomorrow's world, in tomorrow's economy, which is AI driven on the one hand, which is quantum economy altogether. So we always have to keep that in our minds. And the point is, we want to have control over this migration. We have to give the people the feeling back also that we have control over what is happening within the European Union, and that the migration policy is under our control and not under the control of smugglers, of human traffickers, or of third countries even. So that is our approach. You were mentioning a couple of topics we're dealing with, like the pact implementation, the pact on asylum and migration. I think it's a very good basis. It's not perfect, of course. Nothing is perfect in this political world, but I think the pact is something we agreed upon, where we have a solid basis. There are some missing pieces, of course, which we try to deliver, and I would love to talk about that later as well, like returns, like safe third country concept, like a safe country of origin, and other parts. And I also think we have to be a bit quicker. I think as a European Union, we are always too slow. And now we have the gap between the existing legislation and the one which is not sort of in, which we can't look at the moment because it hasn't been implemented yet, be it in the parliament, which is quite slow sometimes, I have to say. Just to give you one example, we were discussing about not we, but the parliament was discussing who is going to be the rapporteur on the regulation, on the return regulation, or on the safe third country concept for 5-6 weeks, which is incredible. I mean, does it really? Of course, it does matter who's going to be the rapporteur, but it's not sort of that important, I would say, to take 6 weeks. So again, coming back, sorry, to the pact implementation. When I look at the progress we have made on implementing the pact on migration and asylum, I'm quite optimistic, I would say. Not naive, but optimistic for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because of the scale of the ambition of the pact itself, and the fact is the European Union, as I said before, agreed on all these changes together. We know there's one country in the European Union which is, to be diplomatic, a bit reluctant on all those things. We know who we are talking about, which country we mean. But if we look 10 years behind, 10 years ago, that would have been impossible, I would say. There was a long discussion on the pact for years and years and years. Some of you might remember, and now it's actually a legal reality, which is good, and that we are also putting into practice. A lot of people calling you, I'd say. Good. I hope it's not because of me. Huh? Good. That was the first reason why I'm tried to be optimistic. The second reason is because we are now at the halfway mark of implementation, and we have assessed quite a lot of progress up to now. Broadly speaking, the news is good. I would say the member states are moving forward when it comes to questions like Eurodac, for instance, reception conditions also, which is of course also very important. On returns, also yes, but also when it comes to integration and legal pathways. And I think we have to talk more about the legal pathways as well, and I'm sure we have some time for that after that. So I think we are on track, but of course there's still a lot to do for the member states and also for us, some challenges which we have to address, which we already did address with the member states together. The third reason why I'm optimistic is perhaps maybe the most important one. The conversations I'm having with the member states, and I was traveling quite a lot to the member states in the last months and weeks. Did more than 20 so far, and by the end of the summer it will be around about 24. Haven't been to Hungary, obviously, and to Ireland actually. So I have to work on that. Sorry about that, Graham, but we have to work on that maybe. But these conversations with the member states are really make me actually optimistic, because everyone is really behind the implementation of the pact. Not everyone, as I said before, there are some member states, well, one at least, or maybe two, which are a bit more reluctant. But also when we get involved with the European Parliament, they really stick to the implementation of the pact, stakeholders all together. So that makes me quite optimistic. I think for the first time, I think there's a broad political consensus over the need for European solutions on the migration topic and to manage migration, also to address the citizens' concerns also, which are there, of course, and also on the other hand to safeguard our asylum system so that we can continue also to offer protection on the other hand, and to those who actually need it in the future. Coming to the return. The return proposals, the return regulation, some people mix it up. They still think it's a directive. It's not a directive. It's a regulation. We were just discussing that in the council or before the council this morning, and some of the leaders of the member states still think it's a directive, and I had to correct them, which I don't like to do, of course. But okay, there's no choice. Returns. I saw this. Consensus actually also there. I do agree, of course, and I'm aware that there might be some concerns when it comes to the return regulation, totally aware of that. But I think it's something also we have to work on, because it's just not acceptable that only 1 out of 5 people who are not legally in the European Union and who have a return decision already are actually being returned. This is just not acceptable, not for the public, not for us as politicians, and that's why we presented this new regulation, where we specifically go into the problem of those posing a security threat, for instance. That is something where we also have to work on. But to make it that short, negotiations are starting, of course, or have started in the Parliament and in the Council already. But I think now with this new proposal, which is more ambitious, that's true, we are off to, I would say, a much better start of this all, and this reflects also the political consensus, at least I see, in most member states, of course, but also in the Parliament. We have also learned lessons, I would say, about what is needed to ensure a broad support, because we, of course, we do need a broad support on that, and that's a balance. I think we need to find in these legislations, we need to find a balance. We are, as you said, we are firm, but of course we also have to be fair. That's pretty obvious as well. So, for example, the new regulation will better clarify the rights of returnees also, and that is an important step, I think, at the European Union level. But that is, as I said, that is balanced also with responsibilities, on the other hand, to cooperate with authorities, for instance, and as I said, being a bit stronger on those who pose a security threat. When it comes to legal migration, of course, as I said in the beginning, one of our main goals must be to replace illegal and dangerous migration. Also, it's a dangerous journey. Sometimes people face when they come via the Mediterranean, for instance. We have the situation just now that from Libya, some boats are starting again, and people are actually being pushed into these boats, also from the authorities, from the official Libyan authorities, which is horrible. And they have boats for about 25 people, and about 150 are on the boats. And now they're using bigger boats, fishing boats, with about with place for about 500 people, pushing them away from Libya. It's not. It's actually, well, we can talk about that later, but it's just horrible. That's why I'm traveling to Libya next week or the week after, to get involved with those. I know there will be some criticism about getting involved with authorities which are a bit dodgy, to be diplomatic again. But but we have to get involved. There's no option, I think, at least. And it will be quite a tough journey, I would say, and that's why I will take the Italians, the Greeks, and the Maltesians with me to show them in Libya that we have this Team Europe approach, that we all have to work together on solutions there. So dangerous migration, I was talking about the dangerous migration, and to replace it with safe and legal pathways also. And there are, I would say, when it comes to legal migration and legal pathways also in our labor market, there are big skill gaps in the European labor market. We need to step up a gear, I would say, to attract talent, to attract energy also altogether across a wide range of skills and sectors. Not just IT, by the way. It's more than just IT. I've only been here for 7 months now, and we have already, I think, achieved quite a lot on migrations and borders to come to an end now, because I know we would like to discuss different things afterwards. But I think we have achieved a lot in borders, in migration, pact implementation, I was mentioning, return, safe third country concept, safe country of origin, just to mention a few. Entry-exit system, we are working on that quite intensively. There were some member states which were a bit behind, but now we know that the readiness report, which we received a week ago, showed that the member states are ready now, which is good news, because the entry-exit system, it will be the most modern system in the world we will have. We've got biometric data at the end, and that we know who is going to be within the European Union and who is going to leave the European Union afterwards. So that's where we stand. But the next big challenge we have is going to be expanding our talent partnerships, our talent pools, also the legal gateway offices. In my recent dialogue with international partner, it has been one of the main topics actually on the agenda, from Egypt to India, South America. That I think the appetite is quite big for us to do more. What is important is that we make cooperation and talent mobility part of I would say a wider relationship. In other words, linking this also to discussions on development, on investments, on security, on readmission. So doing a bit more in a sort of migration diplomacy also. And that's important not only for ensuring the European Union's interest are taken into account, but also because we want migration to be mutually beneficial. Beyond just migrants' remittances, of course, by taking I would say, a rather holistic approach, we can create true circularity also in migration. Just to mention an example, maybe if an Indian student comes to the European Union to train and to work as whatever, doctor, nurse, the links between talent mobility and health development policy, for instance, will allow him or her to share those skills back home also. Or if a software engineer from Kenya, for instance, comes to the European Union to work, linking again migration to trade and investment will help him or her to scale up his or her company in maybe African markets at the end of the day. So in short, our level of ambition for a better European Union migration policy is I would say much higher than well, I say ever before, but before maybe because it has to be. There's no choice we have, and the stakes are I would say simply too high for us to be any less ambitious politically on the one hand, but also, and coming back to legal migration, also economically. So thank you very much again for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for providing some details already on the topics that we want to discuss today, and also for your optimism that I'm sure we will have the chance of probing in the course of our discussion. I want to make a start by looking at legal pathways, and particularly at labor migration, as your declaration that migration needs to be managed, not feared, is a sentence that caught my attention. But I also recall that at your hearing, you highlighted that legal pathways is a piece of unfinished business. And you already hinted at some of the initiatives that you want to pursue in the course of this cycle. I would be curious to hear, what do you consider as essential for making sure that the EU is capable of attracting talents from abroad and then close those gaps that you have pointed to? Thank you.
Now it's working. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. You were the one who was listening to the hearing. Was that you? Okay, it's good. It's good. Because it must have been boring. Okay, yeah. Okay. No, thanks very much. Yeah, legal pathways and legal migration. First of all, again, stressing that we always have to differentiate. I know it's not easy in the sort of broader media bubble sometimes, but we have to do that. Really differentiate between legal and illegal migration. The illegal migration part, of course, we have to do everything to stop it, but not only. And I'm coming back to the legal part quite soon, but to stop it before people actually go on this dangerous mission, I would say, because a lot of people are dying in the Mediterranean, wherever, and so to prevent that, I think, is important. What we exactly do is, when it comes to legal pathways, also we do have some possibilities already, like the talent pools, the talent partnerships altogether, but that's not working that well, I have to be honest. So motivating the member states also to take part in the talent pools, in the talent partnerships also, and as a European Union, getting involved in a more intensive way with third countries, like we were in India as a college, for instance, and the Indians were telling us we have a lot of very well trained people, for instance, but the match between the needs we have as European as a European Union, or our economy has in the European Union, and the talents they have is not that good. So let's work on that. That we help them to get better trained for the needs we have in the European Union. So this partnership, I think, with third countries is key. And we've got the same situation with Malaysia, with Indonesia, for instance, and all these regions actually want to get more involved with us now. Maybe because of the situation in the US also, because they know now that even the UK is coming closer. They won't be part of the European Union tomorrow again, but at least we have the feeling that they want to work closer with us because the situation is not that stable on the Western side. And to be honest, in the last years before this administration came into power in the US, we were maybe seen as a bit boring as Europeans and a bit slow also, but that can be an advantage now, I would say. And now people throughout the world and regions throughout the world see us as maybe more reliable, trustworthy. So that could be an advantage for us also when it comes to negotiations or talks or meetings, whatever, with third countries on talent partnerships, on finding the right people and the right matches.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to use this as a segue for the next question, because more than once, I think you have highlighted that Europe should be more confident about what it has to offer. And yet, you also very candidly highlighted that some member states are more reluctant than others in joining EU initiatives and perhaps taking a EU-wide approach to labor migration and creating legal pathways. And my question would be, what do you think are, in the long term, the risks in not taking strong actions at the EU level and instead having member states taking unilateral actions and pursuing their national priorities instead?
Well, the risk is that we don't get anywhere because we are too small as a member state A or B or C. We are just too small. We don't have the power, the possibilities, and as a European Union altogether, we can put everything on the table. That's why I think the word migration diplomacy also is the right one, because then diplomacy means, yeah, it's a give and take, and it's something we can put on the table, and we have to be more self-confident, I would say, as a European Union altogether. And maybe, I mean, that's our task, of course. Maybe we didn't do a very good job in that. Persuading the member states to take part and to tell them the advantages also we see as a strong European Union. The leverage possibilities are, of course, much higher if we have a Team Europe approach altogether. I didn't like the Team Europe wording in the beginning, but now I get to like it in a way. No, just look at the Libya journey next week or the week after. I think if we don't have a Team Europe approach, then Greece doesn't have any possibilities. Italy doesn't have any possibilities, and Malta, of course not, because it's too small. But if we go together as a European Commission, together with the member states, and showing our partners that we are strong enough and working together, I think that's the only possibility to go forward.
Thanks. And I want to go back to international cooperation later, and I'm sure there will also be questions on Libya specifically. Moving to another important file, perhaps what is the most in the mind of people here in Brussels and the new pact. I've read in the letter circulated by Commission President that, of course, some progress has been made, but a lot still has to be done. And you transparently discussed about both the technical work that still remains to be done, but there are also political obstacles in place. I would like to hear from you, what do you consider as the main challenges in the implementation of the new pact, also considering the very close deadline of June of next year?
Yeah, a close deadline is good because in the beginning, a year ago, I always heard, or in the beginning, in December actually, I always heard, well, everything takes too long. but now, as you rightly said, it's getting closer and closer, and we have to be prepared. What are the biggest challenges? I think some challenges is about the digital side. Eurodac, for instance, was a bit of a challenge for some member states, maybe, but I think that could be okay. Entry-exit system, because there are of course differences. If you have a big airport like Frankfurt or Charles de Gaulle, it's of course not as easy as if you have a small border crossing, whatever. So that's a challenge for those member states with big airports, for just to mention one. Yeah, that's maybe the biggest challenges, and also that we maybe have to front load some of the things from the pact, like we do with entry-exit, like we did with the safe third country concept. I think front loading and being faster in the implementation, that is key, because member states, and also people living in member states, of course, don't understand why it takes 2 years until June 2026 from last year 2024. So we have to be faster in implementing, because now we have a time where the new legislation is not existing, just on paper, but hasn't been implemented, and we still rely on the old legislation, which is not suitable anymore. So we are just in between, and that's why we have some discussions with some member states also, how they deal with it.
There are many technical questions relating to this transition period that I'm sure, if they don't come out today in our discussion, they will be the subject of exchanges in the future as
Definitely.
well.
And what is also missing a little bit, and what is difficult, is the external dimension. That with the pact, implementing the pact with the legislation we have here, we try to bring our European house in order. Yes, of course we have to do that, but that's not the solution at the end of the day. So we need to get involved, migration diplomacy again, with third countries. Otherwise, it doesn't work at the end of the day. And that's why we are putting so much effort in these negotiations or discussions with third countries, because that will be key. When it comes, just to give you an example, the numbers of illegal migration have decreased, especially on the Western Balkan route. One of the reasons why is because we have agreements with Bosnia-Herzegovina, for instance, with Frontex and Bosnia-Herzegovina and all the other Western Balkan countries, and that has helped. And numbers were dropping in the last 3 years by about 92% in 3 years. So that's the good news. We've got challenges on the Libyan side and on the Atlantic side, rather, when it comes to the Canary Islands, for instance. But on the Western Balkan route, it helped. So getting involved with third countries, looking at the external dimension, I think that is also key.
I will want to pick your brain on a couple of important elements to that cooperation and migration diplomacy. First, if you allow me to ask a follow-up question on the political obstacles instead, coming back to the new pact implementation. And I would like to hear how you think the Commission should handle a potential scenario where some member states, or maybe a few member states, or maybe one member state is not yet in a position where it can apply in full the new pact reforms. And I'm asking because the progress update that you have published is very clear that all member states are expected to implement the rules, because this system can only function if everyone applies the rules.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and there's no secret that we know who the countries are, which are a bit reluctant, to be diplomatic again. No, we do have, of course, one specific challenge with one member state, which is not willing to implement the pact, which is not cooperating. And we have time until June 2026. And then if it's not implemented, we have to take measures. It's quite clear and quite straightforward. It's pretty obvious, because we all agreed, or the majority agreed, on the pact, and now it's about implementation. And and we have some possibilities there, of course, financially, especially financially.
Can I ask you, would you be ready to then take those actions from day one?
Day 2.5. Never, but yes, maybe not on the 30th of June 2026, of course not, because there's always some negotiations, of course, necessary. But yes, we are of course willing to take action.
Very much. And then before opening the floor to the audience that I'm sure is keen to ask you some questions too, I wanted to briefly touch upon the reform to the return system that you also highlighted on this occasion is a missing part of the agenda. And you have highlighted that in your view, the negotiations are at times a bit too slow, despite that consensus, which you described, is emerging among member states. What would be also considering the efforts that you've put to come out with a proposal within the first 100 days, what would be a reasonable but successful timeline for the adoption of the reform?
Well, that's not in my hands, unfortunately, because as you said, we were quite quick with presenting this because it was a missing piece of the puzzle. But now it's of course in the parliaments and in the council's hands. But talking a lot with member states, I have the feeling that the council is quite willing to be quick. We talked, of course, with the Danish presidency also for the next 6 months, and they are very willing to work hard on that. On implementing the pact on the first hand, but that's more time on that, but also on discussing the returns. So I'm quite confident there when it comes to, well, of course, there are always some detailed questions. Whatever, France has in some details, some questions or some different views maybe than Germany. I don't know. Just to mention 2 countries, but I'm quite optimistic that and we discussed it in the council also. So on a member states level, on a council level, I'm quite optimistic. The parliament is of course quite a broad parliament, so we need majorities there, and I don't know what the discussions and the negotiations will bring, but I do hope, of course, also there as quickly as possible. I'm not saying by the end of this year, but hopefully, of course, as fast as we can get it, the faster the better.
Commissioner, I will now move on and start collecting some questions from the audience, and I can already see several hands coming up. I would ask colleagues to please handle the microphone here on the first row. I think it was Friedrich and Olivia who asked to take the floor first. Yes, please. And then I will ask Helena to please pick one question that was asked from our online participants. Please introduce yourself and really stick to questions, no long comments, so that everybody gets the chance, or more people get the chance to ask questions. Thanks.
Exactly, keep it short. Friedrich Puttmann, Konrad Adenauer Foundation. You were talking about the external dimension and about returns. How do we increase returns? How do we convince partner countries to take their irregular migrants back? What's our current strategy there?
Thank you very much, Commissioner Brunner, for your time and your remarks. My name is Olivia Sundberg from Amnesty International. 2 quick questions, if I may. The first, you have mentioned the fair but firm approach. It's no surprise that we hope this also entails being firm with member states when it comes to upholding EU and international law and standards. And we continue to see, beyond the question of pact implementation, we continue to see cases where EU and international law isn't always being respected. For example, the case of Poland and the ongoing suspension of asylum. So my question will be, will the Commission be carrying out a public legal analysis of the compliance of this law with EU and international law? And at what degree of departure from EU law will the Commission take steps towards enforcement? We know that there was the communication in December, of course, but we also know that the Charter of Fundamental Rights, EU primary law, and international law is very clear in the need to uphold asylum and the prohibition on collective expulsion. Very quickly on Libya, Amnesty International and many other organizations have already documented how EU support for the Libyan Coast Guard has led to interceptions through EU agencies, EU member state support, lead to interceptions that have trapped people in detention in conditions that the UN has described as crimes against humanity. We are talking about cases like enforced disappearances, torture, ill treatment, unlawful killings, rape, and various forms of exploitation. Against this background, how will the Commission review the human rights implications of any cooperation with Libyan authorities and ensure that it does no harm through any further cooperation? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olivia. And then I will ask Helena to read one question from the online participants, and I will come back to those who have already raised their hands. From now on, if you ask 2 questions, Commissioner, you have my permission to only answer 1.
And I can choose.
I take the liberty as well of slightly abbreviating the questions. One touches upon safe and legal pathways. With the US stepping back, the EU has a unique opportunity to lead on resettlement and humanitarian admissions. How does the Commission plan to work with member states to reverse the downward trend that we're currently seeing and to meaningfully scale up safe pathways along those lines?
Okay, I think I skipped that question because that was too fast. Okay, legal part. Well, I tried to answer. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. Starting with the external dimension and how we convince those third countries. That's what I meant with the migration diplomacy. I think to put migration on the table when it comes to these negotiations with third countries, when it comes to investments, when it comes to trade, when it comes, yeah, maybe also humanitarian aid, maybe also, yeah, we have to talk about that as well. And visa policy, for instance, we're going to present a new visa strategy by the end of this year, and I think visa is something which is really a leverage for the European Union. We had a lot of meetings with African countries. There was this EU-African summit, and a lot of African foreign ministers, interior ministers, whatever, came to my office, and it was all the time visa, visa, visa. And also when it comes to Latin America, for instance, visa, visa, visa. So it's something we have in mind, and I think we should use this possibility, this leverage in a smarter way. That's why we are going to present the new visa strategy by the end of the year. So this migration diplomacy, I think, is important to get these countries to work together, and we have a give and take there as well. So yes, we are ready to invest, we are ready to help, we are ready to get engaged. Also liberalization maybe in for some countries at least with visa, but of course on the other hand we need something else as well. Fair and firm, yes. On member states in this case. Yes, of course. And I think we showed that already in the past. Example, Hungary, where we imposed at least some financial things as well, 1 million per day. You know that best. So yes, we showed that already, that we are also fair and firm towards the member states. Poland is a difficult question, I have to say, because Poland is of course under a lot of pressure. And I was there at the Polish-Belarusian border twice actually already, and that is what is happening there is really incredible. I mean, the authorities, the Russian and the Belarusian authorities, are pushing human beings towards the border, equipping them with diesel aggregates so that they can cut the fences, and then pushing them over, or try to push them over. What the Polish border guards do is preventing them from actually coming. Once, of course, they are on the Polish surface, it's a different question, but preventing them from coming because the authorities are pushing them over and using migrants as a weapon, actually, weaponization, is just not acceptable. So the Poles are in a real difficult situation. I saw that firsthand twice at the Polish Belarusian border. So coming to the human rights aspect, and we talked about that before, of course. I remember that very well. Human rights, international law, and I told you that before, are non-negotiable for us. Yes, human rights standards, international law, we have to stick to that, and we do everything that the member states, of course, also respect that. So being fair and firm, also that is for us key. Yes, but Poland, for instance, has a really difficult situation on this war border, I would say. And just because Libya, you mentioned Libya as well, of course, we see now that Belarus and Russia is actually deporting people to Libya in order to get them to the European Union, because the borders at the Polish border and the also the Finnish border and the Baltic borders are closed, fortunately. So they are pushing them towards Libya, and there is even an airline from Belarus bringing migrants deliberately to Libya in order to have them coming to the European Union, and that's not acceptable either. So difficult, yes, but respecting fundamental rights is key. I know you don't always believe me, but yeah, okay.
I will ask then for two more questions from the audience, and I did see Bashak and Torsten. I'm afraid if I didn't see other questions.
I didn't answer the legal pathway question, but I didn't quite get it, to be honest.
The question is on resettlement, on the fact that the US is
commitments on aid or on okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, stepping up is of course important, but also when it comes to the money, I mean, what worries us, of course, is that the US is probably going to step back a little bit also when it comes to funding. For instance, we have the situation in Syria in the camps and the prisons. That's a real danger, I would say, because we are, as a European Union, we are the by far the largest supporter and the largest donor also of money when it comes to human rights, when it comes to all that. And the financing of the camps, for instance, in Syria, that worries us a little bit, because if the US steps back, the European Union can't step in for everything. Of course not. I mean, there's not enough money, of course, there, but so we can't do everything by ourselves. So that worries us really, and that's also, that could have implications also on the security situation of the European Union. So we have to see the broader picture a little bit.
Okay, my question is on the pact and our assessment of integration policies, migrant integration policies across EU member states shows quite divergences. In other words, where you end up as a migrant has major implications on what kind of services you have access to in the area of labor market, healthcare, education, family unification, political participation, etc. So with this in mind, I was wondering what kind of a perspective does the new pact provide to member states, to local administrations, non-governmental stakeholders in integrating the asylum seekers that they will be accepting through this process, and how will the Commission support harmonization in the area of integration in terms of policy development, know-how, and funding? This is a question we get a lot, so I was also taking this opportunity to direct it to you.
Yeah, thank you for taking part in this discussion. Torsten Moritz of the Church's Commission for Migrants in Europe. I'll be a daredevil and have two questions. And Yeah, Alberto has given you the floor. The first question is if you have any more statistical data on who these people who should return are. I've asked your predecessor, the return coordinator Frontex, with regard to one question, how many can realistically return? If we take the biggest member state, Germany, there's 260,000 who've been asked to leave the country. 210,000 of them have a Duldung, a toleration. That means everybody agrees they cannot return. So the 1 out of 5 is probably not so surprising if we dig a bit into the data. Second question, and it may first sound philosophical, how do you see the role of the Commission in the institutional triangle at the moment? Background of that is that we, in many discussions over the last year or two here, when we ask about the rationale of a Commission proposal, oh, well, the member states want it. I may be a bit thick, but I was always under the assumption that Council is the expression of the member states and not the Commission. I politically understand why, for example, Mrs. von der Leyen reports back and saying we did all you wanted us to do, but I find that highly problematic if we look at the role of the Commission in, for example, initiating legislation, in trilogues, or making sure that laws are kept. So how do you see that? Thank you.
I would ask the Commissioner if it is possible to stay for a couple of extra minutes, given that we started a bit later. And in that case, I'm happy to take one final question, and then just due to proximity, I will ask Witte to come in over there. Please keep your question short so that we give a fair chance to the Commissioner to then respond to all questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Alberto. Diet Novotny from the Martin Center. I have a question, Commissioner, back to the illegal migration you mentioned. Out of maybe 3-4 million illegal migrants in the EU, at least half have entered legally, through a visa-free regime, by airplane or another way. This question is really not being addressed at the Council level, as far as I can tell. Can you see a scope for the current Commission to look at this? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, some questions are going in the same direction. Integration policy is interesting because I think there are some features in the pact which help us to align integration policy also, but that's not easy because it's member states' competence. And even within member states, sometimes I'm talking about Austria, for instance, you've got 9 Bundesländer and 9 different approaches, which is not very bright, I would say. But okay, but that's. But there are some features in it where we try to align a bit better. Of course, there have to be differences because the living costs, for instance, in one country is not the same as in other countries. So, but when it comes to access to the health service, I think there could be an alignment, and there are some features in the pact on that. What we have to keep in mind also is, and what we are always mixing up, and I'm very grateful to those questions, because what I forgot before, it's not just about legal and illegal migration, it's also about asylum seekers, of course. And that's a different story as well. So humanitarian international law applies to asylum seekers, and illegal migration is different, of course, from that. And legal migration is something else again. So actually, there are 3 components we have to differentiate. Who should leave? The third, well, who should leave? I think it's important that we have the safe third country and especially the safe country of origin in this respect. And that was a difficult discussion we had with those safe countries. Let's take Egypt as an example. We thought Egypt is safe. We can discuss that, of course, whether that's true, but we didn't say it as a Commission. We, of course, asked UNHCR, IOM, our asylum agency in Lisbon. So we asked them for their support and for their support. So then we had a list. And just to take the Egypt example again, we said Egypt is safe, except maybe some parts, and that's what we can do now, having a regional differentiation, and also when it comes to the groups within the country. And we said it's safe. Maybe it's not that safe for homosexuals, for instance. And then I came to Egypt, discussed it with the foreign minister, and he said, well, that's not true. That's not true. We are safe for everyone. Whether that's true, okay, we can discuss that. Or Iran, yeah, but we treat them, of course, differently. Bangladesh, for instance, for us, Bangladesh is a safe country. Okay, now we can discuss whether that's true, but yes, I think it is. India is safe. So we have to define safe countries, be it origin or be it safe third country. So who should leave is exactly what we try to point on with safe third country concept and safe country of origin list. The triangle, that's a very good question, I think, and I want to answer that, even though I can choose one of those of your two questions, but I would like to answer both, if I may. I think that is an important question, and that sort of bothers me a lot of times. What's the triangle like? What's the role of the Commission also? And I think, of course, we have to present some legislation, and then it's a discussion on with the co-legislators. But I think to be quicker and to get solutions at the end of the day, of course, we have to get involved beforehand, so that we know what the member states actually want, in which direction. They're not always aligned. And not the member states between them are not aligned, but to get a feeling in which directions the member states go. Also the parliament, that's more difficult because it's a very diverse parliament, I would say. But to get a feeling, I think is important to get involved with them beforehand, hear their views also. I think is really important. But then, of course, it's the Commission who presents the legislation, and then it's the co-legislators who discuss it at the end of the day. Yeah, and that was also a very important and very interesting questions when it comes to the point who is here illegally. We have the situation that most people who are here illegally come on a legal basis with, for instance, a 90 days visa. A tourist visa, for instance, and then after the 90 days, they disappear. And that's where the entry-exit system, of course, helps a little bit, because, and also together with the Schengen information system. So that, I think, will improve the situation. But most people, 50%, come on a legal pathway, on a legal way, and then disappear suddenly after these 90 days. So we have to look at that, and I think entry-exit system, Schengen information system will help us there, has to help us there as well.
Commissioner, and I believe we are running a bit over time, and so what I would
if it's as interesting as the discussion is, it's always good to have more time.
What I would suggest, given the many files that you are currently dealing with, is to invite you again to give us an update.
Of course, yeah.
Where we can jump straight into the Q&A with the audience, as you can see.
Without a boring speech in the beginning. Okay, we got that.
I want to thank you sincerely for having accepted the invitation and for the engaged attitude and for having picked up so many different questions. I want to also thank the EMD team and EPC, and most importantly, I want to thank the participants online and those who came in person for this event. I wish you all a pleasant afternoon. Hopefully it will not be raining too heavily today, and we can go back to the new normal of sunny weather in Brussels. Thanks all. Thank you.